All right, today we're going to jump into a really interesting framework for relationship dynamics. It comes from Alina Chamberlain's work, She Who Awakens. So, right off the bat, let's dive into the core metaphor the author uses. She calls it a conscious union. And the whole idea here, it's not about two things that are the same coming together. No, it's about two totally different energies colliding. You've got the arrow and you've got the ocean. It's that clash, that friction, that creates something brand new. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the big idea, the alchemical union. Then we'll dive into the two core roles, the architect of safety and the source of vitality. After that, we'll see how they create what's called the prosperity loop, and we'll wrap up with some really practical keys to make this whole thing tick. All right, section 1, the alchemical union. So let's really dig into this central idea. The author argues that a truly powerful relationship isn't built on two people being clones of each other. Nope. It's built on what she calls sacred friction.
Now, the claim being made here is, well, it's pretty bold. The idea is that if you can really understand this biological short circuit between the sexes, your relationship can literally become a source of energy, youth, even prosperity.
Okay, so if the whole thing is built on the sacred friction, then what exactly is creating that friction? Well, that brings us to our next section. We're going to start by looking at the first of the two poles, the masculine archetype, which is described here as the architect of safety. I love this quote. For a man, love is a mission of structural integrity. It really frames this whole archetype perfectly, doesn't it? Love isn't just a mushy feeling. It's described as an active, ongoing mission. It's all about building and maintaining something solid, something with integrity. So this brings us to a really key concept in the book, the container. Now, this isn't a literal box, of course. It's about creating a state of safety, of protection. The theory here is that his primary biological drive is to provide this container so that his partner can feel at peace. So let's break down what defines this architect role. The number one directive, provide safety. His sexuality is described as being very directed, very focused. And what's fascinating is that his most profound vulnerability is said to be intimacy itself, that moment where the armor comes off. But his greatest reward, it's seeing his partner absolutely flourish within that safe space he's created.
Okay, so we've got the architect. Now, let's look at the other side of the coin, the feminine pole, which the source material calls the source of vitality. And again, the quote here just nails it. For a woman, love is a state of expansive radiation. See the difference? It's not a mission. It's a state of being. It's this expansive, nourishing energy that just radiates outward and affects everything and everyone around it. And this leads to the corresponding big idea for this pole, frequency. This is all about the vibrational state of the home, of the relationship itself. Her main job, according to this text, is to keep that frequency high. And how does she do that? And this is so important, by staying connected to her own joy, her own pleasure.
So what does that role look like in practice? Well, the primary directive is maintaining that frequency. Her sexuality isn't described as a linear goal, but more like a boundless landscape, something that's cyclical. She's called the high-voltage battery of the whole union. And the purpose of all that safety he provides? It's the fortress that lets her bloom, lets her be soft and open. Okay, this slide really puts it all together visually. It contrasts these two roles perfectly. On one side, you have the architect who provides structure. On the other, you have the source who provides the life force. You've got directed sexuality versus expansive sexuality. Love as a mission versus love as a state. The framework is basically saying these aren't opposing forces at all. They're two necessary sides of the same coin, creating one dynamic whole. So, what happens when you get these two distinct energies, the structure and the life force, working together in harmony? Well, that's when we get to what the author calls the prosperity loop. The whole idea here is that when both partners really lean into these roles, they don't just get along. They create this incredibly powerful, self-reinforcing cycle. And this synergy, this is what's presented as the real key to that power couple dynamic we hear about. It's a relationship that doesn't just feel good on the inside. It actually projects success and vitality out into the world. So how does this loop actually work? It's a 3-step cycle. Step 1, her pleasure and vitality fuel his ambition. Step 2, his success, driven by that ambition, provides her with safety.
And step 3, that feeling of safety allows her to connect even more deeply with her pleasure, which, you guessed it, starts the whole cycle all over again, but even stronger this time.
Okay, so the prosperity loop sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually do it? This brings us to our last section, keys to the union. The author gives 2 really concrete daily practices you can use to anchor this whole dynamic in your real life.
First up, a practice for her called the Hero's Anchor. It's super simple. Once a day, just stop whatever you're doing, place your hand on his chest, and say, "I feel so safe and proud when I'm with you."
Now, the effect of this is said to be huge. This simple act is described as a biological reboot for him. It's a clear signal that his mission, providing that safety, is a success. And according to the text, this can immediately lower his stress and seriously deepen his devotion. All right, now for him, this practice is called the sacred pause. The instruction is to give 3 minutes of your undivided, silent presence. That means no phone, no trying to solve problems. Just look into her eyes, hold her hands, and breathe with her. And what does this do? Well, it's all about signaling to her nervous system that she is the #1 priority. The author uses this great metaphor. It preheats her stove. It helps her shift out of her logical thinking brain and into her body, which warms her up and allows her energy to really radiate. All right, so let's tie this all together. The key takeaway from this framework is that a conscious union thrives on the dynamic friction between 2 very distinct poles. You have the masculine pole providing structure and the feminine pole providing the life force. When those are in balance, they create a self-reinforcing prosperity loop. And maybe most importantly, small daily practices are what can really anchor this powerful interplay. And that brings us to one final, really interesting question that this material raises. What happens when we uncouple these energies from gender, right? Could be architect and the source be roles that anyone can play, regardless of their gender identity? How might these ideas of structure and vitality apply in same-sex relationships? Or, heck, even in our jobs or creative partnerships? It's a really fascinating thought to leave you with.